Welcome to a community built of tomorrow's business leaders. Hey guys, I'm William Freitas, and this is the Socius Podcast. Okay, Socius, welcome. Today we have Ellicia McDonald from the accounts agency, and I've known Ellicia for quite some time, from the dance space actually.
Absolutely.
I won't say too much, but world champion. Multiple times. But Ellicia, I can't do the introduction any justice, so I'll allow you to do that. We always like to dive into who you are and what you do, a little bit about what you do, and I guess what led you to be where you are today.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you firstly for having me. It's great to be here. So, as you said, I'm Ellicia McDonald. I'm the shareholder and director of the accounts agency. So, I'm going to walk you through before I came to the accounts agency because there's a bit of history there. As you said, I met you through dancing. I've danced since I was 4 years old, so it's quite a part of my life. I worked up, as any little kid does, dances, and I then decided I wanted to do it professionally. So I kept dancing my whole teens. And I started with ballet. I moved into musical theatre and cabaret overseas, and then I moved into Latin, which is how we met. From there, while I was in my 20s, I did my degree in accounting. I always knew there was something I needed to go to after dancing. And I then started working when I got back from overseas during the time I started Latin for a firm. Worked up my way through the accounting industry and started my own business 5 years ago. And that's how we got to the accounts agency.
Awesome. And I think you're understating your dancing career.
I do that.
Do you want to tell us a little bit, you obviously were a professional. You started ballet quite young. How old were you when you started?
So I was 4. Yeah, like most little girls. And Mum, I want to go to ballet.
Yeah.
And then I just never stopped. So I did. I started very young. As a ballerina, you kind of need to decide whether it's something you want to do quite young. So at 13, I decided I had what it took physically and mentally, and then I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up doing picking up the pace of the ballet training. And then when I was 15, I actually went full time. So I moved to Canberra at the time to do year 10, 11, 12, which was a special part of the Australian Institute of Sport. So we'd go to school 9 to 1 and then dance 1:30 to 8. So it was a special curriculum that was with 2 different schools in Canberra. It was a pretty hardcore life. It was very disciplined. To know at that age that's what you want to do and shut out the rest of the noise that a teenager would have at that time was pretty hard, but it also just became my life. So, I didn't know any better, I guess.
Yeah. And so how old were you when you needed to make that decision?
I was 13 when I decided to become, at 13, it's a very important age in ballet. Right. It's sort of that pivotal age, which sounds crazy because you're so young, but it becomes that age where you need to increase the training load. Right. I was also in Wagga. I lived in Wagga, which was also quite restrictive in terms of how much training I could get. So I would frequent to Sydney quite often. Every school holidays was an intensive training program, just because I didn't have it available so much where I was. But I needed to make that decision at that age, and that's why at 15 I moved as close as I could to home, which was Canberra. There were quite a few of these vocational ballet programs in Sydney as well, but Canberra was the closest. And so it meant that I then did what I needed to do in terms of that training, because by 17, 18, you're very much sort of then become part of a company school. Right, so it's it's a very important age that if you don't get that training in between that 13 and 17, it's over.
And I'm really interested to hear, because one thing that you noted which caught my attention was that you knew you had the physical and mental ability to take it on. Yeah. I don't think anyone really understands what it takes. So can you give us an insight as to, physically, I have my own assumptions of what that could be. But talk to us about it physically and mentally. Okay,
so physically, this is going to sound terrible to say, especially as a child, but ballet is very cutthroat in terms of do you have the right feet? Do you have the right posture? Do you have the right size? Do you have the right measurements? It's terribly confronting physically for a child, and but that really weans out who, unfortunately, that next group that will continue through to the next stage of training, and then hopefully to being a professional ballet dancer. So physically I had to have what it took. At 17 I looked like I was 12, so I was tiny. I was, I think also the training helped me to stay tiny, but there's particular physical attributes that you had to have in order to be a ballerina. So that's the physical side. The mental side, it's very interesting because I often get asked this, and it's something that I can't explain fully, I guess, probably because it came quite naturally to me. But I'm someone that if I want something enough, it just becomes everything. It takes over me, and it doesn't leave me. It's not a quick desire that, I'd love to do that, and then it never happens. It's something that will stay with me, and it's not that I cut out a pathway to do that. It just takes over my mind, and it naturally happens. So I wanted to be a ballerina. That was the pinnacle, and anything that happened was always, that was the focus in my mind. So, and I never strayed from that. So, I think that it's not about having that clear cut, I must do this and I have to do that. And it's just about, it took over my mind, and that's what I wanted to achieve. And that was the end goal.
And I suspect there would be an enormous amount of discipline required to undergo the amount of training that you would have had to undertake. It really just sounds like you were committed to the goal. From a mental standpoint, you were committed, you were ready, you were disciplined, because you would have been training a number of times. And so I suspect that's definitely going to bleed into, I guess, the next parts of our conversation with how that's applicable to your business life. But
absolutely.
Let's chat about where to from there. Obviously ballet, and you went into a professional dance company and traveled as well at the same time?
I did. So I actually, from 18 to 25, traveled most of that 7 years overseas with shows. So from, mostly stage shows, so theatre work. I did start my ballet career professionally, and then decided it wasn't for me. Having had that very intensive technical background, though, really set me up for any dance style. So I'm grateful for that background, although in the end I actually decided I didn't want to do it at the end of the day. It set me up for everything else that I went into dance-wise. So and to be honest, professionally, it taught me discipline, hard work. You can't have an ego when you do ballet. It bats that out of you. It teaches you so many life skills that you really apply to anything you do in your life. My degree, for example, in accounting, I did that completely by distance education. I didn't go to uni once. The discipline that took to achieve that degree part-time, which took me 5.5 years to complete, it was because I wanted that piece of paper. And so I was used to something taking the journey, because my ballet took a long time to get to where I did. So I wasn't impatient with it, and I was most certainly disciplined to get it. So
now there's a few things in that element. I want to know what you mean by, firstly, you can't have an ego in the dancing world. Why is that?
So ballet in particular, probably not other dance styles, but ballet in particular has no room for ego. The amount of work that you do, and how, I hate to say this, but you're very, the training is extremely, you're very vulnerable as a dancer when you're a ballerina. You're told by your teacher to fix this, fix that. It's constant feedback. It's constant, it teaches you that what you're doing it's about the art form. It's about what you're trying to achieve. It's not about being egotistic or selling yourself in a particular way. There is nothing like that exists. It's about your art form. It's about your technique. It's about you getting what you need to do. And your teacher has a job, and that's to bat any ego out of you, because you literally can't achieve it with ego.
Yeah, right.
So, and that it's a good point that you make, because when I worked up, in the different dance styles that I did and came to the Latin scene, I would often say to my dance partner, let's focus on our art because it will speak for itself. We don't need to go around telling people how good we are or showing off in that, way. Our dance will speak for itself. We don't need to come off stage and get that recognition. It's that if we focus our time and energy, and that's very important, energy, in what we're about to deliver, that will speak for itself.
And you know what I definitely hear in that is particularly ballet dancers or ballerinas, it really sounds like you become coachable.
Yes.
You become really coachable.
Yes.
There's no ego. You need to be able to take on advice wholeheartedly and feedback and be able to, respond positively. And
absolutely.
I see some huge synergies for business as to, you're going to take advice on from clients or feedback from clients or mentors or whatever it might be. So I think that's a really cool, lesson.
Yeah, there's always space to learn, and that's something that I definitely learned from my ballet days is if you ever feel you've reached the top or your ego gets in the way, perhaps, and has put a roadblock there, I don't feel you'll ever achieve anything after that point. So no matter who you are, no matter what industry you are in, and no matter what level you're at in the industry, there is always space to grow and to learn and to move and to pick up from, things from different people. So that's most certainly something that I carried through my whole life as well to now.
I love that. And so take us through, you obviously went overseas at 18. You decided to go and travel and do professional shows for a number of years. Many 18-year-olds at that point are choosing which university degree to go into and what they're going to be when they're older. At what point did you say, I'm going to do accounting? Because it didn't sound like you wanted to be an accountant at that time.
No,
it sounded like you wanted to be a dancer. So how did that come to play?
It's a funny story, actually. I remember coming back home when I was about 20. I was probably 21, and I was visiting my high school friends. They were all at uni. I was, staying with them for a little while and watching them study and, grow this other career. And my mum will vouch for this. I rang her and I said, Mum, I feel like I'm not achieving anything. I'm not going to uni. I'm such a failure. She said, what? She said, do you know how many of your friends would die to do what you've already done in your 3 years since leaving school? She's like, you can study later. She said, you're not going to get this opportunity again. But for me, I felt like there was a missing piece. I always had I was very business minded. But as you said, at 18, no idea I even wanted to go into business of any sort, of any, avenue. In fact, I was looking at sort of journalism or something like that. So it was never, the Petri training, what's it called? Human biology, so it was the furthest thing from me, business. But I got to this 21 and I always just felt like there was something that I wasn't doing, I wasn't achieving. Then I saw a few friends that I'd met through the dance industry reach a certain timeline in their dancing. And as an athlete, everyone reaches this stage where you dedicate and focus your whole life on this one thing, this art form or this sport, because you have to be the best at it or to reach the top, you have to. It takes over your whole entire life. And then you reach this age where you're literally kicked out of the industry, and then you go, then what? So, and I was also very aware of that because I'd seen that happen quite a few times. So I put those two together, and I think that's sort of, I built up this desire to do this degree, not knowing what I wanted to do. So it actually started as a business degree when I was 24.
Okay. Yep.
I started
and
24.
You were still traveling at that time?
I was, yeah. So I actually started it and did actually 2 years, equivalent to 2 years full-time overseas, which was interesting. So they would send my exams overseas, and I would go to the British Council and sit them. So it was a complete program, which was amazing for us to be able to have the opportunity to go, to study from an Australian university like that.
Yeah.
So I definitely, it was a goal to get this piece of paper for me, because of a few things. I knew there was a timeline for me as well, one day. But also I had this desire to do something more with my mind than my ballet or my dancing at the time. So I started with a business degree, and then everyone said, oh my God, you're going to hate the accounting subjects, because every business degree has, 2 basic accounting subjects in it. And I love them. And I was like, I actually really like it. I was going in with all this nervous, oh my God, I'm going to hate it. And I absolutely loved it. Yeah. So I switched it over to an accounting degree, and that's how that happened.
And so did you find it hard physically studying? Like, to me, dancing overseas and traveling overseas sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes.
I would struggle to, put the two together to study. So how did you find the discipline, really, to study?
The discipline, I come back to this thing because I wanted that piece of paper so much. So, I mean, I'm a big advocate that to achieve anything takes a desire or a motivation initially, but then it has the discipline. So it doesn't mean that it was a piece of cake for me. I mean, the amount of Saturday nights I was at home at 4 a.m. finishing an assignment, there were more than 10, right? Yeah. So there was a lot of unpleasant times that I had to spend, and I had to push through that. Like anything in life, we don't always want to work every day. There's always things that we have to do that we don't want to do. But that discipline of knowing that I wanted that piece of paper at the end kept me going through that time. So you need both to achieve anything. Some things, will require less discipline. Some things will take years to achieve, like my degree. But that piece of paper at the end, and knowing that there was something after that piece of paper, kept me on track.
And honestly, it was such a great insight. You were 24 at the time, and hat off to you, because like you rightfully said, there are so many artists or so many athletes that go through committing their whole lives to the art or the sport that they're undertaking, and there's a real big downfall.
Yes,
a real big downfall, and it's sad. Mentally can really have an impact on them. Yes. So much so that they can't get out of it.
Yes.
So hat off to you for, at the age of 24, saying, I want that piece of paper and I'm going to get it, so I can make sure that this isn't just who I'm going to be. I'm going to be something else post my career.
I knew that I had, being a ballerina too actually requires a lot of technical ability. So as much as ballerinas are seen as artists, we're actually very technical creatures to get through the whole way. So I think, ballet also served my mind in that way, which was amazing. But I have a very technical head, and I would almost say my head's more technical than creative in terms of sides, which is interesting because you've seen me on stage, and you know the choreographies we come up with. So I definitely have that creative element, but if I was to go either way, it would be that technical side of me, and ballet was technical. So I kind of had that my whole life, but I knew that once this finished, I needed something else to satisfy my mind.
And so how did you transition from technical ballet to Latin dancing, which can often be quite street, it can be quite relaxed, can be quite open. How did you go from that to
That was hard. So that's the best way to put it. No, look, it was, again, having that technique background. It's the same in singing. If you've been classically trained, your control between mind and body is amazing. So although it took me a long time to pivot to the difference, so for example, ballet is very off the floor. We're very light, out of the floor. Latin dancing is what we call into the floor. So the energy goes down and into the floor, and that gives speed and things like that. So it was undoing a lot of my technique, but because I had that body control and I trained it over so many years, I was able to watch it, figure it out, and then kind of try to implement it. It did take time. It was a completely different technique and training. But if I hadn't had the training that I'd had before, I probably wouldn't have been able to undo and redo and then reach the top of that dance style as well.
Tell us more about that, because you haven't said anything about that. You've obviously taken all of that experience into Latin dancing, and where did you get to with Latin dancing?
So I think I started Latin when I was 27 by mistake. Well, not by mistake. I just went to a girlfriend of mine, said, let's go to a Zouk class. I went, where? So I hadn't even heard of it before. So she started that off for me, and I then sort of, without realizing it, I mean, I was thinking I'll just do a class a week, or, you know, it'll be a hobby for me. At that time, I sort of started, I was doing more accounting than dancing. Okay. So, but I just kind of got swept up because of my dance training, and obviously I was appreciated in the scene from that. I kind of, without realizing it, 12 months later, I was teaching it. So, wow. I definitely didn't have a plan for that, but that's how that happened. I met my current dance partner, who I've been with for over a decade now, very soon, you know, into my life is in the Latin scene as well. So we grew together. He was new to dancing. I was new to the scene of Latin dancing. So we kind of grew together. We remained on the same path, which is often very hard for a dance partnership too, because it is a relationship. It's a marriage. At the end of the day, you both have to be on the same page, going to the same destination, not fight, which we fight, but that's okay. We have a love-hate relationship. But at the end of the day, it's about being on the same path together and wanting the same thing from your dancing, and that's very hard to find and stay there. So we did a competition, I think, after only a few weeks of being a partnership, and we got third. It was an Australian competition. Wow. A dance style I'd danced for only a few weeks. And it just sort of stemmed from there. We wanted to do the next competition. We were hungry. We wanted, it was fun. It was exhilarating. So we kept, doing the next piece, and then obviously with my background too, we got creative. So we did our competition pieces, and then we also got our creative, some more stage pieces together as well, which was a great thing to do. We through my contacts in the commercial dance scene, we did a lot of shows and things like that. So we worked our way up through the competitions to the world stage. I remember the first world competition. So we'd won an Australian title, which got us into the world competition at the time in Puerto Rico. I remember going to Puerto Rico, and for the first time in my life, I said to Mitch, I can't go on stage. And he had to push me to get on stage. Wow. I literally almost couldn't do it. Just being on that world stage, watching 37 couples in salsa that had been doing it from this age, it overwhelmed me, because here I was, this technical, need to have everything perfect dancer. That's what ballet did to me, to watching these perfect dancers in their style that had done it for far longer than me. And I thought, what am I doing? Yeah. This was crazy. So,
out of interest, at that time, how much had you competed in ballet? Because it sounds like you had a lot of a show background, and then in Latin you were competing.
Yeah. So my professional career as a musical theatre cabaret dancer was not competition at all. Yeah. I had competed as a kid in ballet and tap, jazz, everything that a little kid does, and that was part of my training up until I was 17. But after that 18 mark, there was no competition. So I came back into the comp scene at 27, 28.
Because it's a completely different landscape,
Yes, it is.
So I'm not surprised, many could probably listen in and go, wow, like you were a professional. How could you get stage fright at the thought of competition with other perfect people?
Oh, I did.
It's a completely different thing.
It is.
No doubt that would have, gave you some good stead, but I'll let you keep going. You went from there.
Well, no, somehow I got on stage, and our routine was so polished and rehearsed, thank goodness, because nerves can do crazy things to you when on stage. So I was able to sit into that. We got through it without falling over, which was amazing. And I think we got 13th out of 37. So that was my first experience of a world stage in a style that I hardly knew. So I'd been only a couple of years at this time. So we came back, we trained a bit more, and I think we did this next world title we specialised in a different style than we went to Puerto Rico for, and we were kind of getting known for this other style as well. It was called bachata. We went to Hong Kong and we actually won it. So, yeah, that world competition was really, that Puerto Rican one really changed our like just the experience of it was worth 10,000 shows and 10,000 competitions. It really got us ready for what the next one was going to be.
Did you need to change something mentally to prepare you for the competition? Because as we sort of just demonstrated,
yes,
sure, you're a show dancer in the past, but for competition dancing, what did you have to change mentally to get prepared for that?
Yeah, look, there's a lot that goes through your head. Firstly, again, it's about the desire of the outcome. You know, I went to Puerto Rico not wanting to win, not expecting to win. I was a realist. I knew that wasn't going to happen. I wouldn't place. I knew that. I had no idea that getting on the stage would be a challenge, right? So that, you know, I went there thinking we're representing Australia. This is good as it's going to get, but this is fantastic. What an experience. So I just wanted to go for the experience element of it. When we moved then to the next step, it was about placing for us. So that was a mind switch. After that, you switch things like how much you train, your focus in training. You watch the competitions and the expectations. You revise the rules because every comp is different in terms of what, you know, the rules are. Previous competitions and previous winners and the judges, what if you knew the judging panel, what they liked, what they didn't like. So that becomes part of your competition strategy.
Interesting.
So there's definitely a strategy there, and it definitely changed between the first one we did and the future ones we did because we knew we were more experienced and we knew what we wanted.
And so how many did you win in the end?
So we only won one, but we did 5 in total. We got a second and we also got flown by Dance Sport Australia to represent Australia at the Taiwan. Incredible. It was World Dance Sport Games, which for us was like, it's the Olympics of dance. So we literally had an opening and closing ceremony. There were thousands of people there and there was, I was about to say hundreds, but there were, I don't know, about 50 countries represented there. It was in a big stadium, just like the Olympics. And that was such an amazing thing. So out of 26 couples, we became 5th. And Dance Sport Australia were blown away because for us to be in dance sport, which is something that you work your ranks up to being, to get 5th in our first comp with them they were ecstatic. So we kind of jumped around from 4th and 4th. We got a 5th, 4th and a 3rd. Sorry, a 5th, 4th and a 2nd. And then obviously the first, and then the first one was the one that sort of gave us that experience to ready to go and get it.
Yeah, a huge success, of course.
Yeah.
And so how did you... Because are you still dancing now? Are you
So no,
retiring?
I've retired. I've
Retired
tried to retire. Yeah, that's right. I tried to retire a few times. Look, COVID definitely threw a spanner in the creative industries around the world, especially in Australia, because Australia tends to not support it in the same manner as other countries do. So as soon as COVID hit, the whole industry shut down, and it has very much been shut down. Even when we were a bit more open only a few months ago, the industry was still very much struggling to get, because shows were not at full capacity or theatres were not at full capacity. Events, they were nervous about scheduling in case of being shut down with it only 3 hours notice. So the industry hadn't gotten back on its feet. So it's very much, a challenged industry right now. But I had retired before that. Ironically 6 months before, and then COVID hit. And that was very much a conscious decision for me that I played with for a few years for a few reasons. I had my dance partner to consider, and that once we reached our level, it's not easy to find a replacement. Plus, we were a brand. We created a brand, not just in Australia, but we would travel 3 months out of a year to Europe, to Asia, around Australia. So creating that brand, again, that was known was going to be impossible. So that was a big consideration for me, taking probably 2 years to retire. But also the challenge I had mentally, that most of the people that I saw at my age were being kicked out. I was the opposite, where the scene still wanted me, but I was not there mentally anymore. I was not ready to put in the amount of training that I knew I needed to do to keep up to the expectations of the scene on me. So it very much became about me not being able to meet the expectations.
Why was it? Why were you not there mentally? Were there other things at play, or?
Yeah, I think I was getting tired. Physically, I was getting tired. My back, I do have back problems that were tormenting me a bit to be able to train. The adrenaline rush of doing a show, there's nothing that compares to it. But what you don't see is the hours of preparation for that 2 or 3 minute routine on stage. It's phenomenal what goes into it. And as you get older, the more training you need to do. So not only was I not doing the same as before, but I really needed to keep going more so that I could keep my injuries at bay and keep strength up and all of that sort of thing. So mentally it just changed. I just was getting tired. I think that happens to a lot of athletes and artists. You get tired. I didn't have a big injury that made me retire, but I was getting tired, physically tired.
And at this point you were running your own accounting practice, is
I
that
was.
correct?
So I started it 5 years ago. So I went on my own as I knew this was starting for me mentally. And that was key because I was already starting to prepare and prep it because I knew that it was coming. And as much as I fought it off for a while, it was coming. So it was definitely part of my plan. Yeah.
Okay. And so where's the business at now? Like how is it positioned?
Yeah. Okay. So we're a small firm.
Yeah.
We specialize, I don't do tax, but I do work alongside a lot of tax agents. I am an agent with the ATO. I just don't do tax. Tax is law at the end of the day, and I take my hat off to people that do tax, but I wanted more than that. My background's management accounting. So it's working in the business. It's helping businesses budget and forecast and strategy and analysis and giving them that data to better make better business decisions and help with their growth or whatever their strategy is for themselves as well as the business. So that was really what made me tick over. So I started the firm. The firm, we do bookkeeping right up to that advisory or that financial controller level. So everything in between. We find small businesses, obviously every business needs to do their books if it's just for compliance or for tax returns. Yeah. But small business now wants so much more from their accountant. And the tax accountants the tax agents tend to not want to do that area. They're very happy with their compliance and their law, which is great. But that strategy side or helping that small business really understand what's going on with their financial health is sort of an area missing in our industry a bit more, that business advisory. And small businesses that can't afford an internal finance department, that's where we come in. So
you're more integrated in the business. And
we're still that outsourced to them. We're contractors to them, but it's to whatever level they require, and whatever services they require. So you still get clients that just want to do the basics because they have to. They have to do their BAS each quarter or their tax return, and they have all this, compliance that they have to keep up with. But then you get those others that want to know a bit more. They want that understanding of their business, and because they, a lot of business owners start business because they're good at something. Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're good at running a business, right? And you have to, for your business to be successful, both have to come together. Yeah. So, and a key part of that is understanding what's going on financially in your business.
Absolutely. Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth,
yes,
says that exactly. You can be a great technician, but you might not be great at running a business, and you might subsequently lose that passion as well. Yeah. But I want to know, from your extensive, experience as a professional dancer, what are some of the lessons that you learned there in professional dancing that has helped you in your business, entrepreneurship life, like as part of that business owner journey?
Yes.
And I guess when you're giving advice to your clients, what are some of the lessons you've learned?
So there's quite a few. Firstly, again, I'll harp on the discipline thing, but discipline is paramount to anyone's journey in their personal achievements or their business achievements. It's what gets you from A to B and bridges the gap between a motivation or an aspiration to achieving it. It really is. That's what pulls it together. Structure is very important. It really understanding structure and having your systems and processes in place. I can't harp on that enough because small business lack that, especially initially in the first stages of someone starting a business. It tends to be that thing that comes after, and it can really be a key indicator of whether you're going to be successful with your business or not if you have those systems in place from day one. And it's often hard, and it's often something that changes over time. As you evolve, as the business grows, of course, that area is going to change, but they need to be there from the start. Also, I think people skills is very important. And it's something I've probably learned as a creative, being in a creative industry, getting to work with a lot of eccentric people and a lot of people from different backgrounds. I've worked around the world, so I've worked with different cultures. I lived in India for 3 years, which I hadn't told you before. But, I really started again with learning so much about doing business, because what is acceptable here is not over there.
Absolutely.
So that was an amazing learning curve for me. But so just understanding people and being able to nurture what a client wants is very important. And that means that you as a person needs to be able to maneuver and move. I often give this analysis as a PT trainer or as a dance coach. If I would do a private lesson, I'm not a PT, but as a dance coach, it's about the client coming to me, or my student coming to me and me understanding exactly what they want from me. Some people will come to me just because they want that load off once a week. They want to have a chat. They want Ellicias to give them a little routine that they can express and be creative. But it's not about pushing them physically. It's not about them going to a competition and it's really key to understand what triggers them, what motivates them, and what they want. So whereas you'll get another student that comes to you and says, Ellicias, I want to push like you push. You understand what it means. Can you push me? Don't whip me every class, and it's not about you as a coach putting on them what you did in your career to get where you are, because they might not want the same outcome. So understanding people is really important.
That's really interesting, because I guess not only is that great in understanding your clients, but you specifically in your space, as the trusted advisor, knowing what that business owner wants from their experience in entrepreneurship, will tailor your approach, because not everyone wants the same thing in entrepreneurship. You hit the nail on the head. Some want to push like you push. Some are just happy to build build a little business that funds their lifestyle and live happily ever after.
And that's a key element if you come to us for that business advisory level of services. The first thing I'll do is sit down with you and actually help you to understand exactly where you are now, but where you want to be, both personally and business wise, and then understanding the gap and how we're going to bridge it. So that is exactly what you said, different for everyone. There might be some clients, and there are some clients that are just very happy to not coast along. Their business is doing well. They're earning a good wage, and they're happy to keep it there for whatever reason, whether it's just where they're at in their life or the level of stress they don't want, and it's really understanding that. But that's a key part of the advisory arm is doing that groundwork before we go into that level of advisory.
I love that. And I suspect a number of your clients are sort of in that arts and entertainment industry, perhaps given your background. How are they dealing? Obviously, we're in and out of lockdown right now, and time's tough for many businesses, but none more so than I guess the businesses that you would know and the creatives. So what are you seeing in that space? Yeah,
look, creative industries, I have a lot of clients in creative industries, but creative does expand to a lot. I say, for example, my health and beauty are also creatives, because they tend to be eccentric. Or I've got one of the big framers in Sydney are with me. They do all the art galleries, so they're under a manufacturing industry, but I class them as creatives. So creatives does go a little bit wide for what I class as creatives. But look, it's terribly difficult. I'm finding every client has their own journey with this. Some have been impacted more than others. Some it's about having the workload now, but then being strategic with what that looks like over the next few months, given that we all don't know what's going to happen over the next few months. So some of them are even, they've got a lot of work now, but they know there's going to be a lag in the next month or two. So they're being strategic about actually laying staff off right now who can benefit from the government payments, and so that the work gets pushed out, because it's just all about being as smart as you can be given the lack of information we have about what's going to happen next. And that's the hardest thing I'm finding, is the uncertainty, not just for us personally, because we all don't like living with uncertainty, but from a business perspective, that's very hard to live, to plan, to forecast, to do anything in business when you don't have certainty of what next week is, let alone in 3 months' time.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. And I was listening to a chat with Mark Burris actually the other day, and he was talking about how really our roles are to provide some form of hope.
Yes.
And it's not always necessarily easy when there's a whole lot of uncertainty, but there needs to be a forward date that we shoot for.
Yes.
There needs to be a date, okay, well, you know what, in 3 months' time, things might open up.
Yeah.
And in 3 months' time, our plan is to
what
do
does
this.
it look like? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's something you're stepping through with your clients.
Absolutely. I think that's key, is to still work towards something, but have your plan B in case that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But definitely, I mean, that goal setting right now, whether it's professionally or personally, is such an important part of us all getting through this. It's just those little goals that we can hope to achieve that's in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months. They're the things that we can maybe be in control of to some degree, and gives us something to hope for.
And no doubt with your discipline behind them, they will definitely see that goal and hit that goal, which is fantastic.
But you are right, in that my job is to give them some hope. Yeah. It's hard for me not to take some of their grief or their anxiety away, even though I try to put a wall there as much as I can. It does affect me, but my job is to not let them know that it is, and try to give them some form of ounce of hope. And it's not even hope, just giving them, even if it's just helping them, because they're the expert, I'm the coach, to help them map out some form of a plan that they can just feel that they've got some nuts and bolts in to look forward to.
Yeah, I think it's such a huge part. Understanding your business financially is key.
Yeah.
You can be great at providing the service, but if you don't know where you're at financially, cash will bite you in the bum, or whatever it might be,
Cash is king,
absolutely.
As they say. Cash, look, I've seen a few startups not start up or, continue to that next stage of business growth just because of cash flow. And it's not because on their books they're still showing a profit, but cash flow is so important in those initial 12 months to 2 years of a business. And even understanding how to manage that is quite a forte. So yeah,
absolutely. I completely get it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a key issue for
small business.
I wouldn't say it's an industry, but the small business. Correct. I think there's so much. I wouldn't say lack of education, but misinformation in how to run a business. Yeah. It's definitely missing, which is why we definitely need advisors like yourself, which is awesome.
Yeah.
What is your vision for the future? Both, you see in your industry, whether it's arts, entertainment, whether it's accounting, and specifically to your business, where are you heading?
So accounting's very much evolving at the moment, the industry. There's big changes happening, and there's a few key reasons. For example, technology is one of them. So a lot of things are becoming automated in our industry, and which is great because it's moving that mundane, the old cash book, which has obviously not been used for a long time, but the amount of software that's now coming out that's actually doing that for you, not just having it there and you've still got to do manual things. It's actually being trained to do a lot of the bookkeeping work and the compliance work for you. So the industry is changing because of that. It's also changing because of what I said is the small businesses are noticing they need help. They need to understand what's going on and they need help. And so there's a big shift to that advisory arm in our industry rather than just sticking to a compliance arm. Yeah. As I said to you, tax agents, if you just do tax, they tend to stick to that. And you'll have your client go to them because they think that that's their job, but then they don't want to do it. They're not interested in it. And so there's this whole gap that is starting to be filled with helping those individual businesses run their business, and
Yeah.
give them information so they can go away and properly plan and properly forecast and properly grow.
Yeah.
So that's another key area of change in the industry. And I think coupled with the technology takes a lot of the time away, the data entry time away, to enable space for those advisors to now offer another or more, services in
More
that way.
personalized advice.
Yeah.
So I totally get that because, now less so, but particularly a few years ago, financial planners could help you build a plan for your personal life, not so much your business life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where financial planners would say, oh no, ask your accountant. And the accountant would say, no, ask your financial planner.
Yes.
And there's always this little gap in between where you're sitting in quite
where it was
nicely.
for the business.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like planning where this business is heading and what the risks are moving forward too.
Absolutely.
That's super
and
key.
mitigating, making calculated risks. And again, I mean, that's not my job to do. I don't sit here and come in as your CEO. What I do is give you the information and educate you to understand what is currently going on, help you to model some scenarios moving forward, but I'm not there to tell you what you're the business owner is the expert, understands their industry, understands their market, understands what they do. Yeah. So it's for me to provide the data and let's come up with a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. If you were to give small business owners 3 hot tips to improve their, I guess, position, particularly in lockdown,
at the moment,
what would that be?
Hold on to cash. I know that sounds probably easy to say, but and it's probably happening already anyhow. But cash is very important, and I hate to give advice like this, but I have given this to my clients. Things like, obviously at the moment, commercial leases and all of that are very hard to pay, and there's no program that makes the landlords waive or defer rent at the moment. So if you're finding a landlord is not coming to the party, then I would, my advice would be to sit on the cash. Don't pay them the rent. Obviously, there's a moratorium on evictions at the moment. There will be, as soon as we're out of this, it will be lifted. So think about that. But right now, cash is going to get you through this. So try to have at least 1 to 2 months of operating cash flow sitting in your bank account. And I know that's very hard, but that just means analysing your business and cutting down what you can at this time. Standing down your staff, modelling things like I said before about, can I push some work out, depending on your industry, can I push contracts out or projects out, so that can we change a deadline on a contract date, things like that. And the third one, I don't know, I'll have to think about that one, but look, there's a lot of things depending on the industry that can be done right now. So I would probably advise you to research as much as you can on your specific industry. There's still a lot of government support out there that we're not hearing about because it is specific to an industry. So creative spaces, for example, there are other grants you can get to help you through this time that are not specific to COVID, but they are to do with other things. So really research and contact your business support in your state, and see what else you can get from a grant perspective.
I'd agree with that, particularly because I've been talking to clients where they didn't know they were eligible to get certain grants.
You don't know it's there.
Correct. Speak to your advisor. Do the research. Not all the research is going to be up to date.
Yes.
So keep looking.
Yes.
And do the research that you need to, because I know a number of clients that didn't know they were eligible and they were able to get some. And look, we're not a political podcast, but what are your thoughts on the grants? They've been quite slow. Have your clients been able to get them?
It's funny because yesterday I had one of my building and construction clients who applied for the grant, which could, because of other reasons. Obviously, the construction industry wasn't closed down for that first 3 weeks, but we got them the grant because they were actually eligible. They applied for that 3.5 weeks ago, and it still hasn't come through.
Yeah, right.
So look, there is a delay, and then I've got others that applied and got it within a week. So it's very strange how it's happening, because it's not like they're working from the most, backdated and working forward. Some are skipping the line somehow. How that's happening, I'm not sure. Service New South Wales have promised that they're catching up, and perhaps they are. I haven't seen that personally. The Job Saver part of the government support has come through much faster than the grant. So that's a plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Perfect. Well, guys, if you haven't heard what the grants are or Job Saver is, have a look or call Ellicia.
Yes.
Ellicia, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Will.
It's been awesome to see and share, I guess, your journey. There were some things that I didn't know about you, but particularly seeing how you've used your professional dancing experience into then building an accounting business and supporting your clients, utilizing the discipline and the mindset that you achieved as a professional dancer to their businesses is amazing, and credit to you for building the business that you have. And
thank you.
It's been amazing to see it grow, and we can't wait to see it continue growing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
You're very welcome. Obviously, people will want to look you up if you want to note what your hashtags are or what your at symbols.
We've got on Instagram the Accounts Agency or theaccountsagency.com.au. That's probably the best bet.
Perfect. They're the handles. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thank
Ellicia
you for
McDonald.
having me. Thanks.
Socius, thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be part of the Socius community, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in touch. Cheers.